The movie begins with a quiet morning. The sun is just rising and the birds are chirping. We see a red truck parked outside a house, along with a pink bicycle, hinting that a child lives in the house. Inside, a woman is carefully wrapping something in a dirty cloth. Her room is filled with paintings, giving a glimpse that she is an artist. She takes the item and walks down the stairs with a solemn expression, when suddenly, her neighbor greets her. The name of this woman is Jo, short for Johanna Shannon. Jo manages to discard the wrapped item in a bin, with concern visible on her face. Suddenly, her daughter Claire calls her out. Claire wants to ride her bicycle, along with their family dog, Max. Jo kisses her forehead and allows her to play with their dog. Claire is so happy, and rides her bicycle down the street. As she leaves, we see the same look on Jo's face as she fights sadness and guilt. Claire and Max have fun on their ride, and when she gets back to the house, she gets a big shock. As she climbs the stairs, Claire hears her mom taking her last breath. When she enters the attic, she finds that her mother has ended her life. Years later, Claire wakes up from the same nightmare that haunts her, the traumatic day of her mother's. It looks like the incident has left a huge scar on her mind that she can never forget. She suffers from a panic attack and hugs her dog to forget the terrible day. We then see Claire's father, Jonathan, leaving for work along with his friend. Claire gets ready for school and rides her bicycle. She also greets their neighbors, Mrs. DeLuca and Uncle August, on her way to school. On her way, she almost gets hit by the car of the popular and mean girl, Darcy, but Claire luckily swerves her bike just in time and crashes into some garbage bin. Darcy is so busy gossiping with her friends that she doesn't even notice her. Claire, who gets a little hurt, goes to school with a scraped knee and gets annoyed upon seeing her father dumpster diving. She cannot believe that her father would come near her school and to collect trash too. Claire is frustrated, since she's already told her father not to do that at her school, but Jonathan doesn't think he's doing anything wrong. Claire is a typical teenager who is already suffering at her high school and thinks her father is making her a laughing stock in front of everyone. His friend, Carl, then notices Claire's wound, so Claire shares with them about the accident she had in front of Uncle August's house. Jonathan quickly becomes upset upon hearing this, for he doesn't want Claire talking to that man. It looks like Jonathan is wary of the old man and knows something dark about him. However, Claire finds it hard to comprehend why her father forbids her to talk to Uncle August. Jonathan, though, just drops the subject and leaves with his friend instead. Claire is relieved that her father has finally left the school. Later that morning, Claire joins her friends, June and Meredith, in putting up a school banner in the corridor. Darcy throws her drink at their work, spoiling it completely, while her buddy, Tyler, laughs. It looks like Darcy is the perfect mean girl who has made Claire's life at school terrible. Once inside the classroom, Ryan, Claire's classmate, tells her that he liked her banner, which makes her happy. But all her attention is diverted as soon as her crush walks into the class. His name is Paul, and he is one of the hot and popular guys in the school. But sadly, Claire can only admire him from the background. Meanwhile, Jonathan continues dumpster diving with Carl somewhere and finds a big music box. He thinks this will be a perfect gift for his artistic daughter, who will find this unique box cool, and this will also calm her anger. Back at school, Claire is having lunch with her friends, where they talk about Darcy and her attempt to destroy her banner. They make fun of her and start laughing. Suddenly, Darcy walks in with her minions and hears them making fun of her. This angers Darcy, who slaps Claire in front of everyone. Claire and Darcy engage in a struggle, while the other students cheer on and take pictures of them, but eventually, Paul helps a teacher break the girls apart. Finally, the situation settles, and Claire then goes to Mrs. DeLuca's house that day with a bruised face, so her kind neighbor prepares a glass of fresh juice for her. It looks as if Mrs. DeLuca has played a pivotal role in Claire's life ever since the loss of her mother, and she is very close to her. Once Claire gets home, her father informs her about the present he's placed on her bed. In her room, Claire finds a large Chinese music box. She starts exploring it and discovers that it can grant its owner 7 wishes. However, Claire doesn't believe in that kind of stuff and chooses to work on her art homework instead. She then gets a text from Meredith telling her to check her social media account, and once she does, she finds that Darcy has posted a video of their fight. Everyone starts blaming Claire, and she feels ashamed and annoyed simultaneously. Darcy has also uploaded a picture of Jonathan near the dumpster, insulting him and Claire. This is a low blow even for Darcy, because now the whole school is aware of Claire's father and his job. Being typical teenagers, they start making fun of Claire. Now, Claire is agitated, and she decides to use the music box. Although she doesn't believe in it, she still wishes for Darcy to rot. She wants her to suffer as much as she has, and her bubbling anger makes it worse. After making her first wish, Claire realizes that she's left Max outside her door, but when she tells the dog to come inside her room, she fails to notice that it refuses to move and is just staring at her music box. It seems as if the dog has sensed something ominous and doesn't want to get near the box. That night, the music box opens on its own and plays a melody while Claire is sleeping. However, it also closes after a few seconds, hence Claire fails to notice the melody. The next day, Darcy develops a severe form of infection called necrotizing fasciitis, Her body starts rotting, and she is quickly rushed to the hospital. At school, Claire and her friends then talk about the mean girl's condition and how she suddenly fell so sick, and Claire can't help but wonder if it has something to do with her wish. Deep inside, Claire has a feeling that this might be the result of her wish, but she ignores it. Meanwhile, Darcy's friends try to raise a fund for her, but Meredith makes it clear that she doesn't care about her. At home, Claire takes a picture of the Chinese characters in her music box before searching for Max. She searches the entire house, but is unable to find him. Finally, she finds the poor dog, but he is in a terrible state. The dog has lost his life, and his body is being feasted on by the rats. This sight is a big shocker for Claire, who has been deeply attached to the dog ever since the loss of her mother. She starts crying hysterically, and finally her father and uncle come to the place. They bury the animal, and Claire cannot help but cry as Max was gifted to her by her mother. The next day, Claire visits the office of her Chinese teacher and asks him if he can help her translate the Chinese characters written on the music box. However, he tells her that most of the characters are written in ancient Chinese, and that only a true Chinese scholar can help her. Hearing their teacher and Claire's conversation, Ryan offers to help by saying his cousin can translate for her, but their conversation is cut short when Ryan's friend makes an offensive remark about Claire. Ryan interjects, but is of no help. That night, while Claire is scrolling through social media, she ends up stalking her crush Paul, and an idea pops into her head. If the magic box can truly make her wishes come true, then she should ask Paul to be her boyfriend. She asks the music box to make Paul fall madly and deeply in love with her. She wants him to become obsessed with her, like she is with him. The next day, Claire is shocked to find Paul near her locker. He starts flirting with her openly, even in front of his girlfriend, Lola. Claire cannot believe this, and tries to compose herself. Meanwhile, Uncle August is preparing for a bath, when he suddenly slips and hits his head on the bathtub. He then tries to get up, only to hit his head on the tub spout and bleed out. When Claire gets home in the afternoon, she learns from the news about her mother's uncle's demise. She then asks her father if they will attend his funeral or not, and wonders what will happen to his estate and wealth. This is because he has no children of his own, but her father assures her that he was a greedy man and wouldn't include them in his will. Claire secretly hopes that she can get the inheritance, as he is a rich man and getting all that money would solve all their problems. Before Claire goes to her room, she bumps into some of her father's metal rods and gets mad that he keeps on hoarding. However, Jonathan doesn't seem to be paying attention to her, making her even angrier. Feeling sorry for their situation and poor living conditions, Claire takes her music box and wishes Uncle August would leave her everything. She wants to get all the riches and stay in his fancy house. Then, it isn't long before Jonathan receives a call, informing him that Claire has inherited all of Uncle August's assets. Claire can't believe what they've just learned, but they immediately pack their stuff and move into the old man's house. Claire thinks her biggest dream is fulfilled, as she has all the money in the world to do anything she wants to do. Like a typical teenager, Claire also doesn't waste time spending Uncle August's money, for she quickly calls her friends and takes them shopping. They buy expensive clothes, go to a hairdresser, and get complete makeovers. But that evening, Claire finally sees the music box play a melody. Claire is unaware that this melody is not a random noise, but means something else. We see that in Mrs. DeLuca's house. The nice lady accidentally turns on the waste disposal unit and gets her hair caught in it. She then tries to turn it off, but fails to do so. As a result, her scalp splits and her neck breaks. The next day, Jonathan gives Claire her mother's artwork as the two bond, and the two can't help but wonder why Johanna. Claire thinks she is similar to her mother, as they both share the same love for art, and she worries that she might face a similar end. Hearing this, Jonathan comforts his daughter and tells her that her mother was a good person, she loved her dearly, and although she had a rough childhood, that didn't stop her from chasing her dreams. Jonathan thinks his wife had secrets that are too big to bear, and that maybe it was easier for her to just let them go, but that idea doesn't really comfort Claire. Instead, it adds to her worries. That evening, Claire cries as she listens to Jonathan play the saxophone for the first time since her mother left them. She gets emotional after not listening to it for years. Later that night, Claire has a nightmare about the music box, and suddenly wakes up just in time to see the shadow of a person jumping from the balcony. She then immediately gets out of bed to see who it is, but Claire doesn't find anyone around the area. It looks like Claire has a stalker. At school, Paul finally breaks up with Lola and quickly asks Claire to go out with him. He also asks her to go with him to the senior scavenge, but Claire is hesitant and tells him she'll think about it first. Claire loves the idea of dating Paul, but cannot ignore the feeling that it isn't natural and just something her music box orchestrated. After class, Claire asks Ryan to take her to his cousin, Gina, to help with her music box. They then learn that all of its owner's wishes will be undone once the music box is abandoned, lost, or sold, and that it once belonged to a woman named Lume. Lume and her family were suspected of being infected with the bubonic plague and quarantined in a train, where they passed away of heatstroke and starvation. Being the only survivor, Lume took her music box and prayed for revenge in a temple for 7 days and nights until a Yagui, or a demon, answered. Her enemies were then vanquished. But although she became rich, Lume unfortunately in 1922. Also, Lume's story doesn't really solve the mystery of the music box. Claire, Ryan, and Gina still have no idea what the numbers on the bottom mean. Gina then tells them that the other Chinese characters also say that something will happen once the music ends. But just to be sure, she takes pictures of the music box and sends them to her friend for help. Once they're done, Claire thanks Gina for accommodating them, and before they leave, Gina urges her cousin to ask Claire out. On their way home, Claire sees her father dumpster diving with Carl again, and gets into an argument with him. Claire doesn't understand what more her father could possibly need, so that night, Claire tells the music box to make Jonathan less embarrassing. Meanwhile, Gina gets worried upon learning the meaning of the other Chinese characters on the music box from her friend. Then, Gina becomes annoyed when the power in her apartment goes out, unaware that the music box has begun playing again at Claire's house. Claire immediately gets her wish that evening. Her father returns to playing the saxophone again. She gets to experience her father's true side and enjoys the moment with her friends. On the other hand, Gina fails to tell Ryan the bad news about the music box after she accidentally drops her phone from the fire escape. She then returns inside and walks in the dark, unfortunately tripping and falling directly on a statue's horn. This is the tragic end of Gina. The next day, Ryan finds Gina's phone outside her place and rushes to her apartment, where he panics after discovering her body. Meanwhile, Claire finally starts dating Paul, which leaves her friends confused. As they walk down the corridor of the high school, all eyes are on them. On her way to class, Claire is asked by Ryan if she's made any wishes yet, informing her that Gina is gone and that the line she couldn't translate meant the blood price is paid once the music ends. Claire feels sorry for Ryan, but she doesn't admit to making any wishes and leaves him instead. Claire doesn't realize this, but her big lie has cost Gina's life, and if she doesn't stop, things could get even messier. Later that day, Paul and Claire annoy their friends when they decide to eat together. The entire school starts gossiping about Paul's affair with a weirdo like Claire. Despite Paul's affirmations, Claire cannot help but wonder that she doesn't deserve him, as she isn't as popular as him. Therefore, when she gets back home, Claire asks the music box to make her the most popular girl at school. Paul thinks that once she gets popular, no one would mind her dating him. Paul then texts her that evening and invites her to a party, where everyone treats her like a VIP. Paul also kisses Claire for the first time, and she just couldn't feel any happier. However, Claire gets scared when she dreams of taking her mother's place in the attic, and this is an alarming sign that Claire chooses to ignore. She wakes up almost out of breath, and again, she sees someone taking pictures of her on the balcony. Frustrated and angry, Claire takes a rake and follows her stalker, only to be startled by her father. Jonathan wonders what his daughter is doing, so Claire tells him that someone might be following her. She then realizes that it started when she got the music box, so Claire hides it in the vent. Meanwhile, Ryan tries to learn more about the music box. The next day, Claire goes to Mrs. DeLuca's house and finally discovers her body by the sink. After some time, Claire reveals to her friends the secret of her music box, but Meredith doesn't believe her. Claire feels bad, since she thinks that people lost their lives because of her, so June advises her to just throw the music box away. She then goes out that evening to discard the music box, but upon hearing her father play the saxophone, she decides to hold on to it a bit longer. Later that night, Claire goes to the senior scavenge with her friends and Paul. However, while making out with Paul, Claire finds one of her things in her boyfriend's car and discovers he's been spying on her and taking pictures of her while sleeping. Freaked out, Claire immediately breaks up with him, but Paul has no intention of letting her go. Meanwhile, the music box starts playing again, and at the same time, Jonathan calls Claire to tell her he's got a gig out of town. Unfortunately, he gets stuck in the middle of the road when one of his tires blows out. Jonathan also almost gets hit by his spare tire when it accidentally rolls down the street and bounces off a car, but luckily, he manages to duck in time. Back at the senior scavenge, Meredith goes to the 26th floor to play her mobile game, while Claire admits to June that she still has the music box. She then receives a call from Meredith, telling her she's stuck in the elevator and asking her to get someone to help her. However, it isn't long before the elevator cables snap and send Meredith plunging to her demise. Her friends can only look at her body in horror, and June blames Claire for what's happened. Ryan then arrives and takes Claire to his apartment, where he reveals that the number at the bottom of the music box is a military ID number for one Arthur Sands. He got the music box when he was stationed in China, after getting his wishes. The music box then fell into the hands of a man named Lawrence Hart, who ended up losing his mind after his loved ones perished. He barricaded himself in his estate near Claire's house, and that's where he burned up in a massive fire. Finally, Ryan tells Claire that the music box also warns its owner that the Yagui will take a soul after the 7th wish is made. Finally aware of the danger, Claire ignores Paul's texts and begs Ryan to help her get rid of the music box. Unfortunately, burning the music box doesn't work, and neither does hitting it with a sledgehammer. So, in the end, Claire is forced to put it back inside the vent. That night, Paul sneaks into Claire's room and slits his wrists when she refuses to take him back, prompting Claire to call an ambulance for her ex-boyfriend. The following day, both Claire and Ryan get confused when the music box goes missing. As if that isn't enough to make Claire upset, the bank repossessed Uncle August's assets after he failed to pay his taxes for 10 years. Claire and Jonathan then return to their shabby house and she goes back to being a loser. Later that day, Claire sees June and discovers that she's taken her music box. Enraged, Claire forcibly takes it, even though June begs her not to. And as the two girls argue, June ends up falling down the stairs. On the other hand, Ryan witnesses the whole thing and scolds Claire for not thinking clearly. He reminds her that the music box won't do her any good, but Claire isn't ready to let go of it yet. She even threatens to use one of her remaining 2 wishes on Ryan if he doesn't leave her alone. And when she finally gets home, Claire tells herself everything will be fine as long as she doesn't use the music box again. However, Claire fails to control her emotions and wishes that her mother never took. As soon as she makes the wish, Johanna, her mother, returns to life, and it's the day of Claire's birthday. Claire cannot believe her eyes that her mother is alive, and she also has 2 younger siblings. But she cannot ignore the nagging sensation that something bad is going to happen. But she tries her best not to overthink it and just enjoys her day with her family. But Claire soon discovers one of her mother's paintings and realizes that she used to own the music box. Now, things get clearer as to why her mother. Realizing the truth, Claire runs outside to warn her father to move away from Carl while he tries to chop off a tree branch with a chainsaw. Unfortunately, the latter moves as soon as Jonathan takes his foot off it, and as his friend loses his balance, he ends up decapitating her father. Broken, despairing, and utterly devastated, Claire uses her final wish to be taken back to the morning when Jonathan found the music box. Seconds later, Claire wakes up from a nightmare and realizes her wish has come true. Max is even on her bed, and Claire is extremely happy to hear Meredith's voice on the phone and see Mrs. DeLuca outside. She then joins Jonathan and Carl in dumpster diving, and quickly looks for the music box, hiding it before her father can even see it. After that, Claire goes to school and gives Ryan the music box she's put in a bag, instructing him never to open it. She also kisses Ryan and asks him to dinner. But as soon as she turns to cross the street, Darcy accidentally hits her with her car. The students are shocked to witness it, as the impact of the crash sends Claire flying and landing on another vehicle, and none of them even dare to approach their classmate. It is a sad sight to see Claire as the final victim upon the completion of the 7 wishes. Later, we see Ryan, who gets curious about the bag that Claire gave him and decides to open it. When he uncovers the music box, he cannot help himself but to read it. He soon discovers that the box can grant him 7 wishes, and a smile appears on his face. It seems that the music box has found its next victim, in the form of Ryan.